No, it's
Oh,
on
okay,
this.
you're gonna.
So there you are.
Okay.
For those of you who might be watching the live stream, we'll be starting here in just a moment. Thanks for being with us on the live stream.
You know.
Don't know. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. For those of you who haven't met me previously, I'm Pastor Paul Hoffman. I am the interim part-time transition pastor here at Luther Memorial. I've been here since the 1st of December of last year, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this place for what I think is a really important neighborhood conversation. I'm going to ask one of our church council members, Marilyn Enlow, to introduce our guest. And we also want to welcome those of you who are joining us either in real time or on the recording of the live stream. Marilyn?
Well, good afternoon. It is really nice to have you join us this afternoon. I have the privilege today of introducing our speaker, Joe Elenbaas, and he is a crime prevention coordinator. And I have to thank him extra because he is actually from the East Precinct, because we have a vacancy in our North Precinct. So anybody out there wants to be a crime prevention, you can talk to him about it. So, just a word about what a crime prevention coordinator is. And if I don't have this right, it's on the website. So,
sure.
They're experts in crime and prevention techniques. And it's help with crime prevention, tips to start a block watch group, to request presence like we have done today at a community meeting, and provide some help to discuss ongoing crime concerns in our neighborhood. And that's kind of why we're here today. And I understand if you go on the website, you teach all kinds of other classes, which is really great. So, things like workplace safety and personal safety, calling 911 and reporting. So a crime prevention officer does lots of really great things for our community. So the purpose of this meeting today is just to gather together our Broadview neighbors and others, and we really want to learn and strategize about increasing the needs that we can with our homeless population. We also want to learn how to better look out for and protect one another, and how to make our community a safer and healthier place for everyone who lives here. So thank you again so much for being here, and I'm going to turn this meeting over to you.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. Yes, a little bit of an intro. My name is Joe Elenbaas. I have my cards there if you want to grab one on the way out. They're in the wood card holder next to the pamphlets I put out. I'm familiar with this area. My mother taught across at Greenwood Elementary for 30 years. She retired about 10 years ago, but I'm familiar with the area for that reason. And with churches, I used to be a pastor back in the day. So I'm at home in a sanctuary. My background is in social work, though most recently, this month will be my third year at SPD. Before that, I worked 10 years at youth care working with homeless kids. So ages 12 to 25 was kind of the range that we cared for. And the last half was training new employees and social workers, and doing lots of trainings and speaking engagements. And so SPD hired me for that reason, because of all my background, all been doing some sort of training. And most of the role, as Marilyn introduced, it's kind of, I can explain it, two hats. One, it's lots of meetings and trainings around the city, from council meetings, smaller community meetings like this, to city council meetings and big, large gatherings. And that's trainings or Q&As, like we're gonna have today, or just, or safety trainings and ongoing things. We're gonna hit on probably a lot of that today. And then the other half of the job is security assessments and security recommendations for folks. So if the property, and it's really if any property. So if you live or work in Seattle, we can come do a security assessment of, it's a free thing that we do, and our unit goes around. So any building, house of worship, it can be single family home, multifamily home, churches, schools, whatever. So any type of property, parks, those types of things. So if you want to have a security assessment, you can schedule it with me. Just shoot me an email, and I will reply back sometimes that work. We'll try to find one that works for everyone, and then come out. And usually I schedule it from 60 to 90 minutes, depending on the size of the property they take. And we kind of look at all the access points in the building, talk about various ways to improve if there are any, and then walk through those, give those recommendations. And then you kind of take it with that, if you will. I don't write anything down because everything I write down is publicly disclosable, but you guys write down recommendations and work with it. Does that make sense? So that's the two roles that we do. It keeps us very busy. And as Marilyn said, there hasn't been a person up north for a while. It's been almost 18 months. And so I've been kind of, my team has been tag team up here, and myself and Jennifer, who works at Southwest Precinct, which is West Seattle, the majority of the work up here. So we have somebody that's going through background right now, which takes about 6 months, 6 months. Once they're done, we'll start training them up here. And then a second position for up north, because there's a lot of work up here, is online right now. So I think tomorrow it goes, right now it's internal applications, city employees, and then I think it's tomorrow or the next day it goes, there's a week of external applications. So if there is anybody that has a training background and or experience in public speaking and being in the public, you can come ask me more questions if you want, but I encourage you to apply any type of background. Like I said, my background is not in law enforcement, but I'm in that field, but ask me questions later. So that's a little intro of me. I'd like to go around the room and can they chat to you online? Can they give you? No, the chat's down. Well, I go through a room and just maybe give what your name is, what brought you here, and then what's one thing you wanted to hit on as far as what we're going to talk about today. And now we can kind of talk about what everybody came to talk about. Marilyn, you want to start?
Well, I'm Carolyn Embo, and I'm a prisoner at this church, but I also live on the street just off the trail that goes along the backside of the businesses of Aurora. So I just want to start a conversation. I want to have our area safe for everyone. I want to know what can we do for our homeless population, keeping them safe in this community also, but making it also safe for us. So that's kind of what I want to do.
Okay, cool. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tracy Cunningham. I'm a case manager of the building. It's called Compass Broadview, right across the way. So we have a lot of issues with safety in the building, and I think a lot of it flows over to the church and the church parking lot. And so my program manager and I just want to be involved and connect with people and try to build a safer community here, because I know there's a lot going on.
Hello, my name is Carol Holt, and I am representing Broadview United Church of Christ. I am the office person there. We have had this effort done by the former North Precinct person. And so I'm here to just stay abreast and help figure out how we can all work together to make things better.
My name is Lee Thomas. I live at 120th and Greenwood Avenue. And I'm a conduit. The building I live in has had several break-ins in the past year. And And so just interested to learn if there's anything we could do to mitigate that situation.
Hello, my name is Mary Hinderleiter, and I'm a member here at Luther Memorial. And just kind of reiterate what Marilyn said, just to keep everybody safe and look out for one another is something I would like to learn more about today.
Hi, my name is Anna Cassini. I live just across the street at 132nd and New Avenue North. There's been some break-ins from buildings too, so I'm interested in just general safety precautions.
My name is Julie Mellon. I have been a member in this congregation for almost 60 years and have seen a lot of changes along the way. I'm the president of the church council, and I'm just eager to join the conversation and find out how we can serve our neighbors and stay safe and help the homeless all at once.
Hi, my name's Laurie Mead. I've got kind of a more, I guess, direct concern with a homeless person that's staying here. I'm in charge of the gardens out front, the raised bed gardens, and he intimidates the people who are gardening there. They're little old ladies, and so I want to get him help, but also learn how to get him safely somewhere other than here.
My name is Bill Mead. We've been members here for a very long time. We're just concerned about the safety of the neighborhood and how we can, and our grandson goes to school across the street, and we just want everybody to be safe and how we can get to that point. Okay.
And I'm Pastor Paul Hoffman. As I said before, I'm actually a resident of Mukilteo, but I have a deep concern about the safety of the people who worship here. And this congregation has such an amazing heart for the homeless and those who are in need. And as so many people have said, we are just kind of flummoxed right now about how to make this a safer neighborhood for everyone. And we've been really frustrated by the inability to find people who are homeless, mentally ill, drug affected, to get them the help that they need to be healthier and safer and also less intimidating in our neighborhood.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for sharing. If there is any other questions along the way, raise your hand. We'll go right into it. So we have a bunch of talking points that we'll get on to. You know, a lot of them mentioned were around about specific properties. You know, I would recommend emailing me, have me come out, and we can talk about specifics of different entry points and different buildings and so forth. Just to hit on that, some things, like somebody asked what are some practical things. At your home or apartment or condo, one tip for the front door is every front door should have a deadbolt, correct? And then any access point from the home to the outside. So if you don't have a deadbolt from your garage going in, we recommend adding that to that door as well. That deadbolt goes into a strike plate that's on the frame of your door, correct? And that strike plate has screws. Check one of the two top and bottom screws are going to be the same length. Make sure it's at least 3 inches long, so it's going into the stud of the frame. When someone kicks in the door, the frame is what pops off, not the door breaking. So it's in some construction that those screws on that strike plate on the frame are not long enough, and they're not going into the stud. And so just checking those and replacing them with 3 inches or more screws of length is one tip you can do on your front door or any outside to inside the access door. Does that make sense? So it's one tip, it's one that I would give you on that walkthrough. And then we go through all types of things. I'm training SEPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. And there's 5 principles of SEPTED, and one of them is access control, and looking at the various access points. So we have a few questions on safety, and there are monthly classes that are called Women's Personal Safety classes, and one of the flyers is there. There are non-gender specific classes as well that I help teach, but the Women's Personal Safety classes are women within the department teaching women in the community. And so those classes you can sign up online. If you go to our team's website, seattle.gov/police/crime-prevention. And so that website has all of our trainings and classes, but if you hit meetings and trainings, it'll be there. The link, the shortcut is on the flyer. So if you just want to grab the flyer, you can just find it directly. You can also just search SBD Women's Personal Safety, it'll come up the first thing. Jennifer, my colleague, helps run that and organize that. So you can email her for future meetings, but there always is one link for the next meeting that's on there. So you can RSVP for. We do those types of trainings in person too. So if one of this community or one of the other communities wanted to have an in-person, we could arrange that as well. For if you want to do an in-person gathering, those are virtual currently. So I just like. In those, we teach personal safety and situational awareness. We're not teaching self-defense. We have lots of questions in there about self-defense because we get those questions. One of the most popular questions is, what kind of weapon should I carry? Or if I do choose to carry a weapon, or hey, I have pepper spray, is that okay? Or bear spray or something more legal. Those types of things we don't frown upon them. We still recommend them, any types of weapons, for several reasons. And this is something that we go over in that training. I'll just go over it now just as an example. A lot of those reasons are this: if you're not trained in using the weapon, it could be dropped and or taken away from you and then used against you in whatever said scenario. Also, if you never used it, you could use it incorrectly, and then, so say pepper spray, for example, if you spray it in this room, everybody in the room is being pepper sprayed. And so you have to know that. And so using that type of defense weapon indoors is not recommended for that reason. It also could escalate the behavior of the offender. And so for all those reasons, we don't recommend using it. If you do choose that weapon or any weapon, we recommend that you go to open field, practice with it, whatever weapon you choose, so you're familiar with it and that it can't be used against you. Does that make sense? That's just one example of what we go into. A part of that. It goes a lot about situational awareness, what to do when you're in a place and you feel unsafe, different steps, being a good witness, how to carry yourself on the street, all these types of things. So that class is about an hour long. Any questions on personal safety? I mentioned a few things and we just talked about it, and I'm pointing to another class, but we can answer those right now if you have any. No? Okay. Let's see. A few questions about the homeless population. My background is in homeless services. That's why SBD hired me. The first 18 months of my tenure, I was involved with the navigation team, working with all the city departments to try to figure out which encampments that we wanted to service and figure out how to get services for. 18 months ago, we were removed. SBD, meaning we, were removed from that process. So I was removed from those meetings. And so I don't really have an end to that. That said, we're asked all the time in community outreach what we can do about specific encampment or whatever. So we did create a doc form, a Word form that has the heads of every department, depending on what the encampment or homeless unhoused issue is. And so you can email or call that head of the department or whatever. So I can send that, I'll send it to Marilyn, and Marilyn can send it to the invite group, because hopefully I'll get to everybody. Did I already send it to you, Marilyn?
I think you sent me something.
The resource list? It's just called City of Seattle Resource List. I'll send it to you again. That resource list, if you do decide to reach out to any of those people, I always recommend just putting in a brief description. And in that second paragraph, say that you've spoken to me about it and that I'm copied that way. Sometimes they can loop in information via me because a lot of those departments don't want to get public on what they're doing within an unhoused situation, and sometimes they'll go through me to give you information. So I'm just saying that's how I would recommend copying me and then seeing what we can do. But I'm your community liaison with the city, and I want to help you connect with those services and those departments. That's part of our role as well. Yeah.
So, Joe, what is your feeling about, well, we have people sleeping on our back doorstep here in the church. What is your feeling about, should we go to them and tell them they need to go or to move, or what steps should we take? Because we've had people over here on this side of the church, and they're actually sitting there with their needles shooting up.
Yeah. So the question from Marilyn is, what should we do about specific homeless individuals and unhoused individuals and or drug users? I would say if it's causing the community to feel unsafe, then you call that 911, and then let dispatch send out the appropriate response. It may be an officer, it may be not. It may be a community service officer. I tried to get someone to come today, but they're on other calls. They may show up in the next few minutes. The community service officers are unarmed officers. It's a small squad. It was a dozen, now it's 5 individuals that they're not armed, but they go around to various calls that have been cleared to be safe, and they have those connections to social services and whatever. The person that's doing the garden, that I think so the info, I'm gonna try to grab really quick their email for you. This is where if I had a teammate, I could just, go ahead. Paul.
I'm going to take the mic if you don't mind.
Sure.
So we've done all those things.
Yep.
And when the officers come out, the officers report to us that really they're as helpless to do anything about it as we are. And so it's a pretty frustrating scenario because we're not really looking for someone to be arrested and taken off to jail because they are trespassing on our property. What we really want to have happen is we want to find that person some help.
Yes.
And sometimes it takes hours for the police to respond.
Yep.
And by the time the police get here, the person is gone. We've had violence here, including like verbal assaults and attempted physical assaults on staff people. We've had property damage, theft from inside the building. And the response that we get is always the same.
Yeah.
Like there's really nothing we can do about this. So I think we're interested in a broader conversation about what really is going on in the city and how can we be an agent of compassionate care and change.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a few things. If there are violent incidents or threats or violence, that's a call that needs to be called in that way, specifically. That could get an officer here quicker than a time where, that person that's shooting up on the end of the property is not a high priority call for SPD. It's just, nobody's in immediate danger and nobody's being threatened. They're a threat to themselves, but in the priority things of call priorities, it's a level 3. A 1 would be there's the threat of danger. Somebody is walking the property, threatening people. That's at level 2, excuse me, priority 2. And 1 would be if they're doing that and they have a weapon. I'll get to you one second. So that's like there is in how SP in dispatch works with the officers is all officers have to go to priority 1 first, clear all priority 1 calls, then they go to priority 2s, they clear all the priority 2 calls, and then they go to priority 3s. Thus the delay in, if it's not a priority 1 or 2 time, it's gonna be a while. The numbers are so low right now with officers that those priority 3 and 4 calls, it's taking hours for them to show up. When you're calling these in, there's a couple things that we say in community outreach that we want you to do when you're calling these in. One, we want you to always, I say at a minimum, ask for a phone callback or a phone contact. And that way, when officers do show up an hour or 2 later, at least they're going to call you back and say, well, we're here now, and we'll see the offender, or I don't know if he's the perpetrator or whatever. And then at least you can close that loop of closure. 2, ask for the incident number, because then if officers do show up and you don't like the response, which we want to hear too, you can have the incident number and then you can follow through me and I can get it to the command staff, or we can figure out what happened internally. This doesn't, give you a lot of answers on what's happening and how to be a good steward. I would say internally with SPD, the CSOs, they all have similar backgrounds to me, being in social work and different things, and they know what the bed count is in various shelters. They know where those open beds are. They have connections to services within the city, whether it is REACH, which is outreach work for the city. So you're able to get people those case management services for individuals that are looking to get out of the cycle of unhoused and homelessness. And so those CSO officers, I would say, are a good thing here. Their email is spd_CSOinfo@seattle.gov. I'll say it again, spd_CSOinfo@seattle.gov. You can email me and I can send that back to you as well. Their supervisors kind of manage that team. They're hiring to ramp up that team even more. City Council is really pushing a lot of funds towards an arms response. It's a tricky thing right now because all the calls they go to currently by city policy have to be cleared first by an armed response. So right now officers can hand off calls to SCSOs, and that's primarily how they're used, but they can't go directly to a scene unless it's a scene we know is already nonviolent, like it's not, which is not a lot. So that's for the CSOs. Those community service officers, though, I invited them today because they're really good people with good hearts. That they're the people you want to show up to talk to, an unhoused person to try to give them services. Like they're the fruit of the earth, the salt of the earth. Excuse me. But they're a good fruit for the people, and I really recommend utilizing them. There are other services though, and if you want to send out a general call, it'll be that email resource list that I send specifically for things. There is no number to call besides 911. It's just currently what it is right now. But CSOs are being dispatched. So if we know it's a nonviolent thing and you guys are really it's a nonviolent thing, can we request a CSO? You can do that on your 911 call. And whether or not they're working, they work like 8 to 8 basically. All 7 days a week, but there's only a handful of them, so there's not a lot. But I hear on dispatch all the time, is your CSO available? Because they're kind of on a citywide on all the channels. But that's the SPE response from a CSO standpoint. The social worker response, we have some connections with REACH, but that REACH, those people are really the best people. And I don't know who the North person is. So if you have specific individuals that like them by name, and they want services, I can try to connect you with the REACH directors and see who they we have up here in the North End as those direct caseworkers, and we can try to get those people services that they need, that they're looking for. I know that's a complicated way to answer that whole situation. I think what I would stress is if anybody is feeling unsafe at any point when encountering anyone, regardless of their housing status, I'm not going to really talk about that. Let's talk about your safety or the constituents or your congregation's safety. If you're feeling unsafe, we want you to call 911. Like the officers just are highly trained in dealing with crisis intervention if somebody's experiencing crisis or they're in crisis. And crisis is like the police term for being in like a state of mental health, like exhibiting mental health issues. So if you see somebody like SPD, the officers have to go through a week or more training on crisis intervention, and then get an annual 1-day training as well on crisis intervention. So that's something that they're continually being trained on, and SPD is the leader really in police work with that type of call, just because that's the way the city's done it for the last years. We also have a crisis response team, or a CRT team, that has 6 officers and 6 mental health professionals that are civilian unsworn officers. So they wear like a police bulletproof vest basically, but they're a mental health professional. If they go around, they're helping people that are in crisis, and they're with an officer that's gone through even more training than the 40 hours. They go through like 80 hours, 20 hours of training. Those units are deployed throughout the day as well, usually around 8 to 8 as well. 8 to 10 more for CRT. They work a little bit later because people are in crisis a little bit later as well. So those units are dispatched through SPD dispatch as well. And so anybody in crisis, they always try to do a CRT unit first, and then they move to patrol if not, because the CRT units really, they're super hyperly specific training to be able to deal with whatever there's going on. You had a question?
Well, I do, because here in lies the problem.
Yeah.
I work at another church down the street.
Yeah.
We have,
Go ahead.
We have hidden spaces like the bushes in the garden. And I have been threatened more times than I want to tell you when I go out to ask the person to move from in front of our front door.
Yeah.
And I have had things thrown at me from who knows who was in it. I have picked up needles. I have to deal with things. The last time I was threatened, I called 911, and they did send officers within a half an hour. But I was so this time walked in my office with blinds down.
Okay.
And when they got there, they knocked on the door and said, "There's nothing I can do. They can do about it." They would walk over and talk to the person, even though we were posted no trespassing and everything. They no longer have the right to trespass somebody else's property. And so this week, when somebody almost broke the window throwing something at me, I didn't even call police.
Okay.
So I think I see frustration in the neighborhood. And I don't live in the neighborhood, I work in the neighborhood, but I live just north of the city limits. I think what we're looking for is your suggestions on what we can do.
Yes, so this specific scenario, the person's on private property, so the church property. So I would like to know that incident and when it happened. So if you could email me the day and time it happened and the address, and I'll follow up with.
Well, the one I reported was about 4 months ago.
That's fine. So there are officers, yeah, exactly. There are officers that they're unclear on what they can help with trespass. City ordinance says if somebody has been trespassed or they need assistance with trespass on private property, that we are there to assist. There's the gray area, and I know we're seeing some shaking heads. If officers are saying they cannot do it, I want to know right away. Okay, so we can have command staff address those specific officers right away that are not helping with that trespass.
I mean, we tried to, say, well, said, not able to trying to use trespass because we didn't want to have to take them to court. Like that.
It's really the only way to do it is to trespass somebody.
Okay,
And if you're not comfortable saying it to them, which I understand because the safety in the instance you told us, then it's just a call 911 right away. And you explain why you don't feel like these people, they have threatened me in the past. I don't feel safe trespassing this individual. It's going to be a lower priority response, as we know, but say half hour later, if the officers, that's why I said during when you're calling to ask for an incident number, because then you have an incident number to tie back to, and then I know what officers responded, and then we can basically be like, Lieutenant Osborne, Captain Sanford of our precinct, these officers failed to assist this community member in this trespass, why? And I get an answer for you, and then we can correct that behavior. Without those details, it's hard for me to really follow up and be your liaison. Yeah. Oh, I get it. Yeah. Right. They're not emergency. It's the same. So the non-emergency number is the same operators as an emergency 911. So you can call non-emergency, and you may get a pickup right away if there's no wait time. If you feel like it's a non-emergency, if you're feeling threatened, then it is now not a non-emergency.
But I feel for the lovely people who are working in the garden here.
Yes.
And being threatened. Now they're on private property. I don't understand why that person cannot be trespassed.
They can, yeah, they can if you're being threatened. And I know we have people that are saying that the officers show up and they say they do, because they will go and address them and contact them and ask them to leave. Will they arrest them? The likelihood on that is really low. Like, the percentage is very low. But will they ask them to leave and remove them? Yes, they will, and they should. If they don't, that's when I say, you gotta come back to me and let me know so I can help. We can correct that behavior within the department. It's just, it's not a magic wand. but I want to be able to say, please reach out, utilize me as your tool in the department to try to correct that. Yes.
So this individual, is there an agency that can get him help if he doesn't want?
If he doesn't want it, involuntary. If somebody's in crisis, like exhibiting mental health issues, and is a harm to themselves or others, then an involuntary admittance can happen. But unfortunately, it really needs to take violence for that to happen, either to themselves or others.
He's the one who's done the damage here.
The damage needs to, anytime then it becomes a criminal offense, and that would need to be called in. I wouldn't ignore that. Because then arrests can be made because of that. If the arrests aren't made, then I want to know, just like we were talking about with a trespass contact, if the person is still on the premises and they've broken stuff and the officers fail to arrest, as a definite, you need to contact me right away so we can call Captain Stanton. Those types of things I hear more often in the North Precinct, which is unfortunate. And I really want to know about them right away, not a blog post a week later or a couple weeks later at another community meeting, which is kind of the timeline that I'm hearing things. It's always like a week or two later, and I'm like, you gotta let me know right away. Like this, the command staff is going to be the better prepared to answer that, could correct that behavior right away than it is like, well, 2 weeks ago, Officer Johnson decided not to do that when she showed up to the call. I need to know that. But I understand the frustration because this is a common phrase that I hear. So I'm hearing a lot, and especially up north. Sir.
Oh, yes, I'm a pastor of Grace Management Church. Recently, during the Sunday service, there's people came to our parking lot, cut out the Catholic converter.
Oh, yeah.
Our church members.
Okay.
Maybe a threatening environment for the church.
Yeah.
And some people, they are even afraid of coming to church.
Okay.
I think one of the policemen who are always coming by our church, I asked Is there any way you can provide some kind of safety service and support when during our, our worship time?
So
He's trying to help, but there's any possibility we can have some kind of help.
So you can request, anybody can request a request to watch. Because our numbers are so low, we don't have a lot of patrol out there. The likelihood of it happening will be low. But if you do a request to watch, I would say email that to the captain. You can get the captain's email right off the North Precinct website. And for a specific time, if you know it's ahead of time, you can request to watch. Like the shifts kind of go 11 a.m. is when one shift starts. The next shift starts just the second watch. First watch starts at 3 a.m. 3 and 3:30. Those two units that go out, or deployments. And then second watch starts at 11:30, and third watch starts at 7 and 7:30. So if you start, I would say call non-emergency or emergency. It's not an emergency, so it's not an emergency, which is 206-65-5011. If you call that at the beginning of whatever watch, first watch, second watch, third watch, and do a request for watch, if you want to call, I would say, or you can just email Captain Stanford or Lieutenant Osborne. I can give you their information. I'll send that information to Marilyn so she can send it out as well. An email request watch if you know the set event will be at whatever. When I'm at those roll calls, and I go to roll calls frequently, and that's when the watches start, when all the officers show up and they're kind of told by their sergeant or lieutenants what's going on for this, what events are happening, who's going to be in what sector of the city. Each portion of the city, so this North Precinct has like 3 or 4 sectors, and so specific cars, there's like 2 or 3 per sector, basically responding to things in that sector. And when I'm in those roll calls, there's a request to watch. It's at 1 a.m. on this block. And so it really can be anybody. It could be a block watch leader. It can be a church if there's an event. So I would say email that request to watch ahead of time. And then at the beginning of whatever set roll call, Sergeant will be like, well, there's a request to watch for this. Can you guys make sure you try to be there if you're not on a call? Yeah, it's on the 911 right there. I have a King County 911, and I don't know if it has the non-emergency email. It doesn't. But I'll be one of the things I send to Marilyn to get to you. But if you want to write it down right now, it's 206. Yeah. Let me know when you're ready. I'll repeat it again. The non-emergency line is 206-625-5011. 206-625-5011. And like I said earlier, it's the same operators as 911 operators, just you're at the end of the queue, and whenever the regular queue frees up, that non-emergency call goes to the operator. You can text 911 too. That's a person that's on a computer answering those texts. If you can't, the phrase that we use in emergency is if you can't talk, text. So usually we want our kids to know this, and you may be a DV victim or domestic violence victim. In DV situations, sometimes it's safer to text than call because you're not letting your offender or the perpetrator know that you're notifying text 911. People do it from closets, from trunks, wherever they're locked in or being in an abusive situation. And so those types of situations for kids and for people that are victims, we always say, please text if you can't talk text. Does that make sense? The same operators, it takes longer obviously because they're not immediately just answering, talking on the phone and answering questions. They have to ask questions slower, but that's a services to it as well. I think those pens, I don't know if those are my text 911 pens, but I have some pens that say that.
There's people who abandon their vehicle at all parking lot, and
abandoned vehicles?
Okay. They've been in there, and there's people park their back, and the license plate is found.
Got it.
And are we consider that as
Sure. Abandoned vehicles, so parking enforcement was moved under to SDOT, but they're still requested via dispatch. They also can request for abandoned vehicles, you can do it via Find and Fix It. Who knows what the Find and Fix It app is? There's a few nods. It's a city app that if you want to ask for various services, whether it's a abandoned vehicle, a park enforcement, a dead animal, needles that you find on public property, potholes. There's a specific department that's addressing whatever. Overgrown vegetation, it's like that's city light or SDOT depending on where the tree is. All these types of things you can request via an app, and you take a picture. App works. I'll show you here on my phone. For those that are online, and you guys, where's my little guy? It's Chief Seattle's logo. So online, it's right there on the top corner. So like Chief Seattle's logo. It says Find and Fix It. If you Google Find and Fix It app, we're the only city that uses the app, so it'll come up the first hit. Find and Fix It, you take a pic, there's like 6 buttons. The top one is for create a request or new request. You hit it, there's like 12 to 14, the menu always is changing. You just try to figure out what the problem is, you hit the button. If the problem isn't on there, you can hit other at the bottom and put a description. You take a picture of whatever it is, it geolocates where you're at. You can then correct the address if you need to, and go to a safe place to report whatever it is. And that department, so in this case, maybe abandoned vehicle or park enforcement, I'd say Find and Fix It is your best way to report it, because they'll send an email to the whatever department supervisor, plus it gets requested directly to a person. I get these about once a month for community meetings where they want SP's presence, and it'll be on your other community meeting, and it gets sent to me. Does that make sense? If they don't know who to contact within SPD or don't know how to navigate the website, you can customer service request via Seattle.gov customer service or the app. But the app's the easiest way to make that customer service request. And so there's just a number of things. I used to send out a phone list that had every department. Now I just am like, no, just go to the app. It's just easier that way. It's going to save you way more time than looking up the number and calling. And a lot of departments are like working from home, so those departments aren't even going to answer the call, or they may not. It's going to be harder to go through that phone tree than just to do the app. And you also get a ticket when you do the app, like a receipt. And so I always say put your name and email instead of your name and a number, because then you'll send you an email receipt of that. And then if that is not addressed, say you make once a week, you make this abandoned vehicle request and you have several tickets. And now a month's gone by and you're like, nothing's happened. Then email me those tickets, what happened, a brief description, and I'll email the department head and be like, what's up? Can you give me a timetable on this? Try to push from within the big bureaucracy of Seattle. And that's something that I do regularly as well. So I'm glad you brought it up, because it's something that it's a tool that I like to say, because then we can, because I want to try to help those little things, even if it is just a branch that's, trucks can't go under or whatever. Where are you going to see that?
You must get a lot of emails.
I do get a lot of emails, but, I try not to, Mondays I try to spend just to answer emails. So we kind of pile up over the weekend from Thursday night, and then Fridays I'm out doing security assessments, and I don't really answer them. So I don't answer. Monday morning I answer just all day emails. So yeah, but I'm used to it. I used to be an internet service provider manager, so ran a call center, and I answer emails all the time. It's kind of my jam. There's a lot I'm really good at it. Yeah.
Well, let me offer a process, because I don't know who has had one of your walkthroughs.
Yes.
But the two things that helped us most in Broadview,
With Mary, yeah.
I think it was
Yeah.
was that we have all the outside water and electricity listed.
Yes. Yeah.
So that those who are camping are not as comfortable. They don't have water, they can't charge their cell phones. That's what we feel with outside electrical outlets. They want to charge their cell phones.
Yeah.
So, that was positive that came out of the visit. It didn't help the break-in on the other part, but it did help the numbers of people who were in the bushes.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, in the bushes, the tips would be to cut them back so there's no concealment spaces. In SecTed, our rule is either a 2 foot, 6 foot rule, or I say 3 foot, 7 foot. So 2-3 feet for ground brush and below, and tree canopy 6-7 feet above. It gives a good line of sight and eliminates concealment. So some bushes in the Northwest it's hard to trim back. Roadies are that way, they get big and burly, but we always say, try to limb those up so there's concealment spots. So people choose not to hide behind a bush or whatever, or do whatever business that you don't want them to do behind the bush. So that's just one of the things we say on the walk, where we also talk about, turning off those outlets, locking those outlets if there's outside outlets. Your maintenance may need them, so you might want to lock them. Same with hoses and water. Eliminating those pain points is what we ask for. Thank you, Carol. Right? Thanks, Carol. Okay, I'm also going to send out some things on like active shooter and specifically as being a house of worship. Have the elders and deacons and ushers gone through any active shooter training or any type of training on that? Do you know, Pastor? So there are some links that the Department of Homeland Security, is it Department of Homeland Security? I'm not sure. But there's a really nice man named Knight, and he, Knight's, I think his last name's So, and Knight is a DSHS officer, I can't remember, but he is specifically can do trainings for people at houses of worship, and I'll give you the information for that. A lot of the trainings are also online, so they can go through an usher or deacon elder training, and so all your leadership at least know what to do in certain situations in case there is an active shooter, which is something we really need to talk about in these types of house of worship, because house of worship get targeted by people with guns, unfortunately. And so just being prepared in case it happens and knowing what's going on. The FBI and Department of Homeland Security do like a joint training yearly. That hasn't happened the last 2 years because of COVID, but I have some links I can send, and I'll make sure I send that with this group of information to Marilyn. And did you get invited by Marilyn? So we'll maybe get information from her, or give me a card afterwards. I wanted to mention that before we wrapped as well. There are lots of information out there. We'll get you a bunch of links. One last thing I wanted to say, we only have 5 minutes left, would be to, if there's a thing, one of the flyers I left there's a Smart 911 flyer. And we're like a cell phone culture. I don't even have a home phone at home. We just have cell phones. So you can sign up your household to be the registration for smart911.com, and you can register your cell phones on that profile. And so I register my partner's cell phone and their information, and my cell phone and my information, pictures of us, email and work addresses, our daughter, and like a little picture of her, my pug dog, like different things that in case there is an emergency, the emergency services know what's happened. And so when you call from said cell phone, if you're registered, all that pre-populated information you've given emergency services will pop up on one of the 5 screens that the operator has. And so it does save time in several situations. I would say if there's a multi-generational family, if there's somebody that has a medical issue, putting that on their little profile will help in case they call and they can't speak, and they may be having a heart attack or whatever, if they were to call 911 and they can't speak. That profile will pop up, and then there's somebody with heart issues and they may be having a heart attack. Here's their home address, and they'll save time. Maybe somebody, we always say if there's a child that's on the spectrum, kids that are on the spectrum, they act in different ways, and not what society would say normal. And if you have somebody on the spectrum, having that in one of their profile would be very helpful too. So if they call, or if you call, the operators can then see there's somebody on the spectrum of this household. Officers should be aware of it coming on scene, so they're going to respond appropriately. Nobody's going to be in danger. So that signing on profile is something that I recommend. You can also there's a commercial entity for that, and I'll send that link out don't know if it's on that card or not, the commercial part of it. But so that, in the case for the church, you could put the church's work numbers and so forth and various contacts in your profile. So if somebody calls from a landline on smart91.com, it'll pre-populate on that screen as well. So that commercial side of it, that's Rave Facilities, because that's the company that runs it. I think ravefacilities.com or something. I have the link for it. I'll send it, make sure I include that information I send out. I want to mention at the end because it's a time saver on calls because if you're kind of, when you call 911, even me, and I've worked with this for 3 years, I get nervous when I call 911. It's not you're stumbling through, you may be scared, you're elevated, your blood pressure may be elevated, you're gonna forget things. And if they have little clues to help walk you through it, where you're like, I'm at work, and they're like, it's at the Greenwood address, and then boom, yes, then you've already given that information, and you're like, I have it here, and then, and it'll save time on those calls. Does that make sense? I just wanted to mention it's a very cool tool that's out there. Yes?
Is that citywide or nationwide?
Laurie, it's a nationwide program, I think, but it's all King County, and some of the surrounding cities are signed up. But if you're in King County and Seattle, all those, I know all of them are signed up. I've gotten confirmation on that. Some of the cities around, kind of that Puget Sound corridor, most of them are on that program.
Okay.
But if you go Eastern Washington or Idaho, I don't know. Can't answer, but I can tell you if you're close by. And then they send you like an annual email reminder. Hey, is your profile updated? Like I moved a year or so ago. It was a year this week, or last week actually. And then it said, it emailed me like 6 months ago, are you still at address? And I wasn't, so I was able to update that address. And you can opt into the alert system, which gets you like the Amber alerts and different things when you're doing that. And also like weather alerts, severe weather alerts. That's part of all that system for alert. It's alertseattle.com as well, so you can tell me to do that. Any other questions on that or any other tools? We're at the hour mark. If you do want to have a specific training on whatever, you can please reach out to me and we'll get somebody going. I apologize there's not an officer with me today. Sometimes they can answer things in a better. I love having an officer with me because it's just a different perspective and we can go back and forth on things. Normally we do that, but the officers I normally take with me are being deployed because of our, unfortunately, because of various mandates and our numbers, the officers just are being deployed right now into patrol that are usually working with me in community outreach. So they're not available this week. They were going to come, Officer Lucas was going to come. This week it looks like I'm solo all of these. So but I hope I answered all your questions. Let me know if you have questions that you come up later. Just shoot me an email and I'll get it to you later if you have questions, concerns, or whatever. We can try to address it with whatever part of the department. And it goes like if you're a victim and you want to follow up with whatever investigating unit, I can try to help you navigate that with the SPD as well, or follow up whatever set they. That's why I always ask, write down the number because then I can try to help out with whatever it is. And help you because that's my job. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming.
So I was just going to say, make sure that if you want any information, because it sounds like I'm going to get a lot, make sure that